Hey friends, welcome to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today I read the book of, the first chapter of Leviticus, and I did watch an overview from the Bible Project. And if you're not watching that before you read a new book of the Bible, that's super helpful. I mean, there are plenty of ways to learn about the context and the author and the audience of each book of the Bible, but Bible Project literally did the work for us, and they're in really good, concise videos, and I try to share them on Fun with the Nuns, but you can find them on YouTube. Just say Bible Project and you type in whatever book of the Bible you want to read. As we read through the book of Leviticus, as you open the Bible plan today, my prayer is that you're not like old Jenny and you saw Leviticus and you wanted to like shut the Bible and say, oh, never mind. The joke is that the book of Leviticus is where chronological Bible reading plans, or even if you were like little Jenny and started in Genesis every time you started to read the Bible through, Leviticus is where Bible reading plans go to die. You cannot stop. We're in September and you cannot quit in Leviticus. And I'm here to tell you that this girl who used to struggle with Old Testament, especially law, especially prophecy, this book has become one of my favorites, I will venture to say. And so I want to challenge you as you start this book. What we're going to see in the book of Leviticus, if you read Leviticus 1 verse 1, it says, "The Lord called Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying." So remember, they could not be in God's presence. God spoke to him from the tent of meeting. But what we're going to see by the end of Leviticus, if you go to the book of Numbers, the next book, chapter 1, verse 1 of the book of Numbers, it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting." So some epic, amazing things are going to happen in the book of Leviticus. The question here that we have is, how can Israel, in their sin and in their selfishness, be reconciled to this holy God? And we can ask that about Israel, but we can ask that about ourselves today. How in the world, who am I that he is mindful of me? How in the world do I get to go before God, creator of the universe, almighty, most powerful God? How do we have this relationship for him? And what we're going to see through this book is that God graciously provides a way for people to live in his presence. Now, we know, because it's 2025 and we get the pleasure and the benefit of living after Christ's death. So we know the rest of the story, except for God's return, except for Jesus's return. But we know that that's how we get to do this. But what we're going to see in the book of Leviticus is that the plan for Jesus, God had this plan all along. And so we're going to see how God reconciles unholy people, unclean people, people who clean up, come before God, walk away and sin again and get dirty again. We're going to see how he reconciles us to him, so that from the beginning of the book of Leviticus, God speaks to Moses from far away, but by the end of the book of Leviticus, we get to come before his presence, or Moses does. And now we do because of Jesus. But another thing I want to talk to you about as we read this book of Leviticus, I just want to challenge you. I listened to a podcast, it's by Lisa Turkhurst, and it's called Therapy and Theology. And they were talking about this idea of what we are going to read about in the book of Leviticus. It's this idea of liturgy, and that's kind of what we see in the book. We are Southern Baptists, so we don't talk about liturgy very much. This is from the ancient church. This has existed for many, many times, and it was a calendar, and we're going to watch God set this up for their people. But what we see in the book of Leviticus is a comfort and a consistency in this rhythm that God sets up for his people. God, in his kindness, knew that he knew what we were about to face. He knew what the Israelites were going to face. Difficult circumstances, intrusive thoughts, all kinds of emotions, dysfunctional relationship, all the difficulty of the real world. I think last week was a great example of the difficulty of the real world. But God's like, hey, here's a consistent pattern of behavior of actions that you can participate in that will always remind you of the beauty of God's covenant with his people and the beauty of who God is, so that when we're in those situations, we can be drawn back to him. He knows his people. He knows what we're going to go through. He knows that we need that consistent reminder periodically through the calendar. But if you're like Jenny, you need that reminder every single day. And so he sets up routine. He sets up the feasts and the festivals. Or he says, hey, if you're in this situation, if this happens to you in life, here's what your response is. So you're not left wondering what to do. And I can't help but think, we always, as a people, want more from God. I look at my small groups. I look at the people I do life with. We want to know how to do this life. We are people of faith, most of the people I hang out with. And we want to know how to live this life correctly, how to survive this life. But then when God gives us his literal words of life, we don't want to read it because it's boring. And so I just kind of want to challenge us. What if we read this book of Leviticus with a hunger and a need for attention, affection, and instruction from our one and only mighty God? What if we, a sinful, unclean, unholy people, are willing to do what it takes to come before our holy God and seek his face through the book of Leviticus every day, a chapter or two, every single day? Lisa Turkhurst mentioned that we prepare in times of strength for times of struggle. I don't know where you are right now. Maybe you're in struggle, maybe you're in strength, but God literally gave us his words of life. And let's treat it like that as we read every single day. Let your eyes fall on every word. Ask God, like he says in the book of James that we just read, to give you wisdom. He says, ask for it and he will give it to us. Ask him to speak to you through his word. And I just have to believe that God is going to reveal himself to you through this book, and that maybe, just maybe, you'll come away from this book loving it a little more like I do. All right, friends, thanks for joining me. We'll see you tomorrow for chapters 2 and 3. Bye.